you are the byproduct of everything that you've ever done, good or bad. It's only in your present time that you're able to see the things that you've done with your experience and realize that the moves that you did were correct, incorrect.
Welcome, guys, to the OG podcast. Today we got a real original, Nate from Carpe Diem.
Carpe Natem.
Carpe Natem, sorry. Carpe
It's
Natem.
the podcast with my name on it for those of you who have never heard of me. My name is Nate De La Hoya. Excited to be on here with Caleb, and I am the host of the Carpe Natem podcast, which Caleb was one of our first guests. I think you're in the first 10.
Oh, nice. I made the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
But you do a ton of other things. You work in big tech. You do a lot of motivational speaking. You were in a screamer band. You've worn a lot of hats over the years.
I have done my best to live as fun of a life as I can, and that has gotten me in trouble more times than I could think of, because I genuinely feel that the time that we have on this world is finite, and you should find some sort of purpose in this lifetime, because if you don't, it just seems like everything that you're doing is meaningless, and it becomes like nihilism, where nothing is important, so you kind of can do whatever you want. But that kind of thinking leads to destructive behaviors and intentionally or unintentionally hurting people so that you can gain something from it. And that sounds terrible, but it's a lesson that I learned, that you follow and do the things that you are most excited about.
Yep.
But you have to make sure that at some point it's a win-win-win, or it's a win for you, it's a win for other people, and it's also a win for the greater good of humanity. Because if two people are winning in a deal, but it affects the lives of others in a negative way, then it's not really a true win.
Yeah, you want the win to be between you and the person, and then the whole community, and ideally just integrated as much with nature, like maybe the earth wins as well. It cleans the earth while it does it.
Right.
As many things as you can stack in there.
Because there's things that you and I can do that we will benefit us, make us profit, but if it comes at the cost of hurting someone else, like even though we're winning, it doesn't really
producing oil, right?
Producing oil, or even changing rules to say you and I wanted to start a mic and we cherry picked and gate kept who got to join this mic. We made it very selective. It would be a win for us, because you would get stage time. I would be able to do these shows. We'd have, pay. But if we're doing these things that end up hurting the community, and then we're known as these people that like harm others or step on others or don't allow people unless they have what we believe is what it takes.
Just like a toxic culture and setting up gates where there don't need to be.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of what I love about your content, is it's very motivational and it's very inspirational. And so what are your top line goals there? Because we met in comedy at an open mic in the Romo Room, which was in Austin, Texas, and they don't even have the Romo Room anymore.
R.I.P. the Romo Room.
R.I.P. the Romo Room. Those were the days. But I think they still have headliner shows on the weekends and stuff.
The whole bar shut down.
Really?
The whole thing.
I didn't even know that.
The whole restaurant is gone.
Oh, the Brass Tap is no more.
Yeah, we drove by it the other day and it was just completely gone. So, and that's something that I noticed here in Austin, is that there's a lot of mics that just come and go. And even the first one that I ever did, it's gone.
Where was that at?
The Grandstand.
I haven't heard of it.
I went to their very first open mic ever, and it was at this new venue, and it was going there for weeks. And I wish I would have went more times before it shut down, because I loved that room. It was such a good room. It had people in it. It wasn't just comics. So you got a lot of like really good energy out of it. And it's gone. And here in Austin, things kind of come up, they last, they're gone. And then it's crazy to see what stands the test of time, especially in this, because we're seeing so much of like the inception of shows that are now getting bigger, more popular, that are putting on more events.
I think it's the beginning of Austin becoming the comedy capital of the world. And you have so many comedians that see the opportunity to set up like a shop here and network with people and get get a really good scene going. But in that, it creates a lot of chaos because everyone's opening a new mic, and this one can get an audience and that one can't get an audience, or whatever. The venue shuts down, whatever happens.
Right. They're fighting for limited attention.
I think we have a few really durable shows. Kill Tony is like a really durable show.
That's not going anywhere as long as, Tony Hinchcliffe and the gang stay in Austin, which it seems like they're here for like a long haul.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like they're here forever. I don't know.
We never know what's going to happen in the next, couple of years and what changes. But you had asked me, what is my goal with the whole motivational thing? That's something that I'm really trying to figure out, because personal development, these seminar series and these courses that I've taken really helped me when I was younger. And it helped me kind of develop like a mindset of kind of resilience. It helped me pick myself up, because I genuinely have these really dark thoughts that are super boding and kind of negative and self-harming in the mind. And I do my best every day to combat that with my own personal kind of views. And if I truly believe that everything that I put out, I get back, then I have to put out good. I have to do good.
That's the idea of karma.
Right. And I want to have a life where it's good. Even in times where I'm harmed or taken advantage of or in danger, I do the things that I can to learn from it as much as possible, not dwell on it as much as possible.
And in that way, everything's just energy, because you can take this negative energy and you can find some way to transmute that or transform that into energy that works for you, either because you learned or you somehow developed from that trial. As long as you're actually there's always an opportunity to take everything and turn it into something positive.
And the feedback I get from people is really what keeps me going. I've always kind of done rants on Instagram or posted things that are motivational. I like posting memes too, but I noticed that I got a lot of different feedback from people when they say, I was having a really rough week. I was having a really tough time. I heard your message and it really picked me up. And I want to do that on a grand scale. I want to do that to a point where, and I think I'm also inspired by people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who says that if you want to be the motivational guy, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you're passionate about, if that's something that you genuinely love doing, then do that, create a business around it and then kind of live off it. As a training specialist, I love talking to people. I love teaching people. I currently, in my line of work, I've taught policy, I've taught communication skills, I've taught technical skills like Microsoft and the Adobe suite.
At like really reputable companies and
exactly
in California and Austin.
But what I would much rather be teaching is things like, interpersonal communication, the changing of mindsets, the changing of states, the changing of life, and in the similar way that, Tony Robbins is the main epitome of the Beyonce of the personal development gurus, right? And I don't necessarily want to get to that level, or maybe I'm selling myself short, but if I could do what he does, help change the way others think so that they can improve their lives, so that they can do better for their families, so that they can do better for their communities. Like, I don't ever see anything that he's ever doing is manipulative or terrible or evil. It just seems like he's trying to help others become better, and he's able to live a beautiful life like that. And I guess that's what I want to do.
And it seems like that creates the best opportunity for those good vibes to bounce back to you. I really think a lot of what you're putting out there does end up echoing back in some form or fashion.
Absolutely.
And so if you're putting out good vibes, motivation, and like just trying to figure out, and I think, when it comes to like dark thoughts, and a lot of people we all have those. And not a lot of people talk about that because it's not a great post on Instagram or whatever.
And I'm not trying to tell anybody to not feel sad or upset. I feel terrible constantly, and I do my best to maintain the habits and routines that I have set in place so that I can continuously improve myself, because on my worst days where I do not want to get out of bed, where all I want to do is turn on the shower and lay in the tub in the fetal position, and trust me, I've done this multiple times this year, right? You really have to push forward, and who am I to tell others to push forward and to keep on if I can't even keep on?
Totally.
So it's out of integrity if I don't do it myself. And don't get me wrong, I slip up plenty of times. I'm still human. My latest episode, I know this specific episode is going to come out in the future, but episode 50, I cried on that episode because I was having a terrible mental health day, and everyone is entitled to their days off. There are just some days that no matter what we do right, it just feels like an off day. And during those times, you have to do what you can to get to the next day. And that's the minimum that you can do.
But even that helps people because, again, that authenticity, it's relatable, but you're showing, like, yes, nobody is superhuman on the planet. Otherwise, they would go be a god, right? Like, everyone has limitations. Everyone has things that they deal with. Some people have become really adept and really practiced at one thing to the exclusion of other things. Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard to find balance in all those things.
It really is, man. And it's crazy because I have like 49 other episodes where I'm like, what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going? Keep pushing. And then here I am having a day where I need my wife to come home to coddle me because I just feel like I'm overwhelmed. And burnout is really interesting. Some people say that by speaking it and saying that you're burnout causes I
think there's some to that, though, right?
On yourself.
It's whatever the energy that you're putting out there that can get echoed back to you.
If you constantly tell people that I'm sick, then your brain will agree that it's in a state of sickness.
Have you heard of the nocebo effect?
The nocebo effect?
It's the opposite of placebo.
Tell me about it.
Well, placebo is like if you believe that something really good will happen, like to your body or whatever, like you think the medication that you're taking is going to work, then it actually does make a improvement. But the nocebo effect is the same idea, except with causing like a disease or like a malfunction in your body, where if you're constantly dwelling on like something is going to happen, you kind of cause it to happen. And these are effects that have been documented scientifically. And I think what's interesting about them is it lines up so well with your work because it really is the power of your mind to create change. And that's a lot of the crux of motivation. Like sometimes you have to have motivation, sometimes you have to have discipline, sometimes you just got to be a regular human being. And there's like a balance in all those things.
That is the root of what I teach and what I believe and what's my own personal philosophy is that it does start in your mind. At the end of the day, you're able to take on, and it's shown historically and repeatedly that people can endure insane tragedies and insane feats of mental, physical, emotional, just carnage and get through it and become better and still help. Like somebody that I see go through a lot is like David Goggins.
Yeah.
He was somebody who went through something really tragic as a kid and then forced his body to push itself to a limits to the point of destruction. And when he says like, you can get up and you can, he's pushing past, I'm sure his feet hurt. I'm sure his joints hurt. I'm sure he's put his body through things that I can't even conceive.
He's such an interesting example. Anyway, keep going.
And then I have to then sit there and be like, oh, I can't get out of bed today.
Yeah, right.
So it makes me want to just be a little better. Yeah. I don't want to run a marathon, but let me wake up in the morning and go for a run because that improves my overall day. Gets my body moving instead of spending an hour in bed on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's almost
which you're not going to feel good at the end of that hour. Like go make a post for Instagram, if you're going to be on Instagram, make something or whatever.
Make content. And right. That's what's so cool about like things like TikTok and YouTube is that there is a need for content and everybody is looking for something. And with us, as there's such a need for it because of how much people are consuming at mass quantities, what if you can put into that pot something good?
There's a wiki page called the 1% rule of wiki. And it says that 1% of the people are creating, 99% of the people are consuming. Yeah. And they relate that to like online communities. But I think that is at least how my behavior has been in the past. I've either been a consumer of Instagram or a creator of Instagram, and with everything in life. And so that's an interesting stat. Another one that I liked was some obscene proportion, let's say above 80%, but I think the stat was like 90%.
Are you talking about the 80-20 principle?
That's the Pareto distribution. This is maybe that actually it could be 80-20. And so I think it is. I think 80% of the content created online or watched online was created in the last 24 hours. So it's like everyone's only watching the bleeding edge of content. Mm-hmm. And most people aren't creating, they're consuming.
And there is something where videos that I looked at in 2012 that made me bust over laughing, I watch now and cringe.
Yeah.
where the amount of content that's being put out there is just so overwhelming, and you end up building a tolerance to it.
Yeah.
Where
It's overwhelming.
So when something is presented to you, we have such a high standard for it when there are people who still have never seen an ice maker.
Right.
You know, in 2022, they,
or don't have clean water, or, you know, like whatever it is.
Just in the middle of conflict, and we're over here complaining
Yeah.
that our iPhone 13 doesn't work.
Yeah. We have existential crises with, you know, all of our luxuries or whatever.
Especially when you come accustomed to it. I can't imagine a life for example, like the Great Depression. It was cataclysmic in the sense that you had people with fur coats waiting in soup kitchen lines because everything crashed.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of safety nets that we would never experience that again unless
maybe
super nuclear war happened.
Yeah.
But unless that happens, yeah, you're going to have like a bad day. You're going to lose some shit. But at the end of the day, you're fine. Like,
figure it out.
One
of the things I really like about your content is gratitude. And I think that is such a, well, I guess, what do you think is the relationship between depression and gratitude?
I still think that there are certain types of ailments of the mind that definitely vary from person to person. So when it comes to something like depression, you may need medical attention if it's super bad. However, the states of sadness that people kind of feel on a regular basis can be mitigated or minimalized if they focus their attention on what's going good in their life, because it's so easy to complain. And I do it at an all-star level. I think that my comedy derives from me complaining and like bullying and kind of like looking at all the bad things and taking things apart so I can better understand it. But it's so destructive as a behavior. If I'm constantly focusing on what's wrong, what hurts, what's this, that's all my brain will then look for.
Well, that's what I love about your post on TikTok is it's the countering effect to that.
So if you practice gratitude on a daily basis as a routine, because it's one thing to just sit there and pray, but I genuinely think that there's some benefit to, before you eat, saying a little prayer, it could be to God, it could be to whatever. I know a guy who's not really, he's spiritual, and he just prays before he eats. And I think that, how many times have I stopped and just been grateful that I'm putting food in me?
Yeah, right.
Because I've taken it as just something that just comes now. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to eat. I've never not felt like I couldn't. Well, there was times where I was so broke I couldn't afford food. But
how long ago was that?
3 years ago.
Really? That's somewhat recent.
Yeah, there was a point where I was like living in my car. There was points where like
How long did that last?
Not a couple of months. Like I had places to stay, but when those places ran out, I had to stay in my car. And that was something where I was like, oh, it's okay. I don't really have a place to go. And I
scrappy
got my account so in the negative that I wasn't able to buy food and overdraft my card.
Damn.
So I get struggle, right? And I do come from a place of privilege. I went to like somewhat of a good school when I was a kid. I got kicked out of 2 Catholic schools, and it's a privilege that my mom was even able to afford to put me in something like that, even though whatever.
So it was a private school.
It was still a private school, dude. And even though I fucked up and, was very rebellious and stuff, like that's still a point of privilege. So I have to check into myself and be like, I complain so much about so many things when in reality, I'm so blessed to just even have this meal in front of me. Yeah. And how often do I stop and just think like, man, I'm so thankful that I got this. That guy gave praise to the universe. Other people give praise to God. Give praise to yourself. Like you were able to have this meal, whatever it may be. It's an accomplishment at such a minor level, but it's overlooked, even though it can be exemplified, it could be focused on. So gratitude's huge for that.
Gratitude is huge for that. Is there an element of mindfulness in it for you as well? There seems to be like a lot of just taking into consideration our overall privilege in the world. Mm-hmm. If you compare us to anyone, most people alive on the planet today, the privilege is crazy. But the big thing that always gets me into the gratitude zone is comparing yourself to history. Because if you go even just 50 years, but go 500 years, and you start to get a real perspective that everything we have is a privilege. Clean water, like that changes your life. Clean water. The internet, it's the YouTube. We have all these different privileges that if you compare it to anyone in history, it gives you such an advantage in life not to think about how do I get clean water, because that takes up a lot of mental energy.
I'd recommend a book, I believe it's by Steven Pinkerton, called The Better Angels of Our Nature. And
I've heard of it.
The entire book is just statistics on why currently we are in the safest time to ever be alive, ever. Like, it's the amount of people that don't die during childbirth, the amount of clean water and access to resources that we take for granted. All these things are just, it's just basically a big old statistic book stating like why everything's so good right now. But it's kind of hard to feel like it is sometimes. I feel like with the content that the content that is most seen online, it feels like it causes divisionism, it causes chaos, it causes uncertainty, and I get anxiety from it too. I'm constantly reading headlines of like different,
the war in Ukraine,
the invasions, the different types of Roe v. Wade being overturned, and all kinds of things. It seems
like a regressive period that we're living in.
It feels like a very regressive period, and I don't really know what the point of it is. And I'm hoping that at the end of everything, I hope that all efforts go to the greatest possible outcome, the greater good of things, and I'm hoping that we all move towards that. It's just, it does feel regressive and kind of feels like everything is done to spite someone else or spite another group.
Totally.
And if anything, the world needs less of that and more things that are about bettering yourself.
Yeah.
Building a community, building a strong community.
Yeah.
And then really kind of going back to
the spite thing
roots.
Is rough because I think a lot of people are blind to their motivations. They're just kind of like a monkey reacting. No, I'm going to go do that. And it's not until you have some retrospect.
Then that's the right choice. And if your team wins, that's the bad choice. And it's like, it's not that binary.
Well, and also it's realizing that everyone's on the same team. Especially like people in our world, like Austin comedians or whatever, creators. And
there are people fighting each other and threatening each other on Instagram. I'm not going to name names, but there are people who are straight up just saying things like, if I see you at the show, I'm going to beat your ass. If you're stealing my joke, you're stealing my content, you're doing this.
Threats.
People are crazy. There's all these petty fights, and it's just like, dude, we're all just
but like whatever you're doing, like maybe you have a family, maybe you're trying to be a content creator, whatever you're doing, there's a lot to be gained through cooperation.
100%. Collaboration is a huge thing.
Yeah, but through conflict, yes, you can develop some new science and technology, but you expend a tremendous amount of resources. Like anyone can look at a war and be like, well, look, we got, Genghis Khan unified the currencies, or Hitler created the computer,
billions of people,
at the cost of billions of lives, real people, and resources as well. And so what you could imagine is that, yes, you do get some science and technology from war, but you also get science and technology from exploration and cooperation.
Unless you burn down the Library of Alexandria, or you do book burnings, which is still happening in 2022, which is insanity. There was, I think in Indiana recently, just look up 2022 book burning, and there was one where they were putting in like just random literature books, Harry Potter books. For some reason, Harry Potter books get burned a lot. God. Yeah, constantly. They're just crazy. Like, it's blasphemy.
That's why they keep printing so many, I guess.
I don't understand what the main issue is. Of course, it's like a rage of ideals, but I do feel that some sort of like religious extremism is currently at fault for a lot of the conflict of it. But it's not just that. It's an amalgamation of different ideologies just kind of conflicting constantly. But it's really weird just to see everybody fight when we should just be doing what's best for everyone and not just for certain people.
But yeah, like I was saying, I think a lot of people are blind to their motivations. They're just kind of reacting, and it's not until later you look back and be like, oh, I could have handled that better. But as long as there's people out there thinking about it, and trying to improve.
And to what the point you just said is that you grow older and able to kind of look in hindsight on your actions and realize that maybe being as radical as I was, or taking that path, or thinking that I could get away with that, comes into question. It's just like, you are the byproduct of everything that you've ever done, good or bad. It's only in your present time that you're able to see the things that you've done with your experience and realize that the moves that you did were correct, incorrect, the best choice. And you would hope that everything that you've done up until this point was the right choice, but
it's definitely not, because you're a human, you have insufficient information and understandings, and so whatever, you're going to make mistakes, or you're ignorant or arrogant, or there's all sorts of ways to make mistakes.
So with that in mind, despite everything that you've done up until this point, the best thing that you can do is do everything from this point forward in a way that helps and does best for not only you, but for others as well. And then you can just kind of like have
I think
a
it's okay
better
to be selfish,
man.
though, and start with yourself.
No, you should. There's this thing I learned about called,
I'm gonna hit this.
go ahead, called the 8 dynamics. And this is a Scientology reference, but it makes sense to me to explain this, where if you have some sort of like conflict in any of the dynamics, they kind of all fuck with each other. So you have to be aligned constantly. And this is what each dynamic is. So your first one is yourself, right? So you have to make sure that yourself is taken care of, because if you can't help others at a level that is, sufficient or efficacious to help someone else, then I'm okay. You have to make sure that you yourself are taken care of. Then if you yourself are taken care of, the next move is to make sure that the people most immediate to you are taken care of.
It's like Maslow's hierarchy of community or whatever.
Yeah. So then it's your partner, your spouse. You could be your best friend. It could be the people who are the most closest to you. Yeah. Your kids. Then it becomes like the communities that you're a part of.
Yep.
And then it stretches out to like the whole world. And then the other dynamics go all the way to like the God dynamic, which is just all space, time, and blah, blah, blah. But the first 4 makes sense, where if I can do good by myself, I have to do right by myself. I can't just give 1,000% to my kids and let my health deteriorate. Where if you have some sort of like conflict in any of the dynamics, they kind of all fuck with each other. So you have to be aligned constantly. And this is what each dynamic is. So your first one is yourself, right? So you have to make sure that yourself is taken care of, because if you can't help others at a level that is, sufficient or efficacious to help someone else, then I'm okay. You have to make sure that you yourself are taken care of. Health deteriorate. I have to make sure I'm doing well, because if I don't, how the hell am I supposed to help my children if I can't even help myself? I'm not living in integrity.
It's putting on your oxygen mask first in the airplane.
Exactly. And then if I'm able to do well enough that I'm able to then spill over, and then now I'm able to help those closest to me. We want to give our kids the best education. We want to make sure our spouse is taken care of. We want to make sure our closest friends are in a good place, just like we are. And then again, if you are able to reach another level of wealth and you go a step above, then you can then start developing your communities. Yeah. Well, you don't even have to be a big place of wealth. There's a lot of people currently working in that third dynamic. The comedians in the scene who are opening mics, the people who are buying venues and hosting shows in their backyards. Those people are working for their third dynamic, that community space. And even the fourth dynamic, which is the greater world. It's like all of humanity. You do the most important ones in the middle, and then as it spreads out, it touches more and more people. So it doesn't matter like what level of wealth you are, what level of status you are. You can always do something to help yourself, those closest to you, and the community around you for the better.
Yeah, like how do you actually make effective changes in your community? Is it like the widow's mite, where it's just your day-to-day ministering on the street or whatever, and like you're helping people as you pass them? Or do we need like top-down, systematic, well-funded plans to improve things?
I think it's a combination of both, because you have to make sure that the structures that are able to kind of help instead of hinder. I feel like things like school currently, as they're based right now, aren't as effective as they could be, especially with all the data and education that we have. Yeah. Like schools can be improved. Things that are being taught in schools should be more relevant to like actual needs that people will be using, which is, I genuinely believe, like communication skills, community building. Yeah.
But I guess your broader point is, as you're starting to like motivate and work with yourself, that can have this effect that spreads to more and more people over time.
Right. And you have to be receptive to the knowledge. I can't force anybody to drink. You can't lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So if I'm able to yell into the void and send out a signal, if I can just ping 1, 2, maybe 3 people, and it helps them for the better, then I'm willing to do that. Like I'd like to create programs that help with that. I'd love to create seminar series, and it just helps as it's helped me as somebody who was, arrested at 16, somebody who used to self-harm and cut themselves on their forearms, as somebody who just had all these emotions and issues that I didn't know how to deal with. I would love to give back to my community by kind of like educating others and saying that, hey, you don't really have to do all that. Like if you understand the capabilities and the powers and the potential that's in your mind.
Well, I think that's half of it, but I think
better.
I think a huge help to people is just seeing another person that is authentically sharing their experience. And then you feel like, okay, I'm not the only one who's like going through those things. That's a common experience.
One of my goals is
here's ideas of how to, make it better or whatever.
One of my goals is when Carpe Natem monetizes and becomes something that makes money and generates income, I want to donate a portion of it to Feed America or some other donation place because I feel like I could be giving to others and kind of build that. The more it grows, the more I'm able to give and serve. And that's good. I want to do good for this world because if I die, what's people going to say to me? That I fucking made them feel bad, that I came into their life and destroyed it, that I did that. And there's already people who think that. So the idea is like, how much good can I do in this world and how much good can I experience? One
of my buddies said something on a whim and it always stuck with me. Maybe he got it from somewhere. He probably got it from somewhere. I don't know. But it was, we're all hurting each other trying to be happy.
Yeah. There's also the phrase, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. But I feel like so much of that stuff is unintentional. You're just reacting, like you have an emotional response. You should have had a rational response.
Awareness comes to that. You had mentioned before the practice of stillness and kind of just being. And that's something I currently I struggle with because I have I have all these thoughts in my head swirling constantly. And some people would call it anxiety. So it's hard for me to just kind of be in the moment where I get lost in these conversations in my head while driving. Mm-hmm. So I try to do my best to kind of be present as much as I can. But trust me.
So do you have like a meditation practice, or how do you think about how to improve your general sense of presence?
Breathing, sitting, and just kind of being. I don't do it often enough, but when I do notice a difference in kind of state. And I've had all these resources to try and really keep a routine with it, but I've failed to uphold it. And I think that stillness and just being present is something that just changes everything for someone, especially if it feels like everything is just so chaotic. And for me, it does.
But it's hard to maintain that state of mind for long. And I think that's one of the things that you can gain in meditation is, like whatever, like the guy on top that's telling you to meditate, give that voice a little bit more control to be present and to stay in the moment. And because that really is, I think, a lot of what creates gratitude. If you're ruminating on the past, or you're scared of something, or even fantasizing about something in the future, you're like totally missing your life. And I'm not saying that that's not something that you should do from time to time, because we should all consider in retrospect and whatever. Yeah. But generally,
there's no point of dwelling on it. If you're not present, how the hell are you experiencing what you're experiencing in the moment?
But how much presence do you think people have per day?
None.
Yeah, right? Like everyone's looking at their phone, and it's hard to be present.
I go I wake up, I fucking see it the first thing in the morning. Even when I go on my run, I have my earbuds in, and that's feeding me data instead of listening to the sounds of nature. It's just always connected to you. You're always plugged in. There's always something playing. Mm-hmm. There are people who take that stillness, and if I do journal, if I do one of my practices, I do feel like that's my little bit of meditation, is when I do the gratitude, when I create content and I'm in that moment and I'm trying to work my thoughts out.
Yeah.
That's my moment of just being there and seeing what comes out.
Yeah, that presence is hard to achieve. So, but you don't train it through any means, or?
No. In my current standing, I don't. And I feel like that's something I want to work on. And
I'm bad at it. I try to meditate, but I'm bad at it. Like 5 minutes, that's a long time to meditate.
Hell yeah, it's a long time to meditate.
It's a long time to meditate.
And then you're like,
like 30 minutes. Are you out of your mind?
Make your thoughts silent. How? Yeah. You think I would do it if I already knew how to? Like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Have you used Headspace before?
I did back in the day use Headspace. Yeah.
Headspace was fun because they're like, if a thought comes in, treat it like a
I
feather
like
in a
that guy's
balloon.
name or voice, Andy Puddlemore.
Yeah.
And he's got a funny name too.
And he just is like, push your thoughts away with like a feather. And I'm just like,
Push your thoughts away with a feather. I can't remember his voice.
and then I'm just there like internally screaming,
Yeah.
push this thought away.
I did it for like a year or something. I did Sam Harris's as well.
Mm.
And it's just kind of fun to have somebody guide you through meditation, I guess.
My friend has an app where it's binaural beats, and there's ones for sleeping, there's ones for like focusing, and there's something about like putting your brain wave at a frequency to help you with all this concentration. And I'm like, yeah, you could do that, or you could take some Adderall and just fly off the handle.
Yes.
Not recommending, by the way. Not endorsing or recommending, but goddamn.
I have such a mixed relationship with Adderall. On the one hand, I love it, and I think it's like an incredible drug, but it comes with a huge cost.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been thinking about the cost of it because, you know, I toy around. And one of the biggest costs is, I mean, I have a legal prescription. I have a subscription, I like to say, to it. And so one of the benefits is you do get an increase in focus and attention. But I think that totally comes with putting you out of touch with how you're actually emotionally and physically feeling.
Yeah, it dulls those senses just so that you can be more productive.
Not only that, but like getting out of touch with those things just puts you naturally out of alignment with your body because you're not really feeling when you're tired. You're not really feeling when you're hungry. And having those like natural states guiding what you do every day, like what time you wake up, what time you go to bed, what time you eat, what do you do, is way better than like relying on the focus of Adderall or whatever. No, so I think it's totally a double-edged sword.
It is. And then once you're off of it, you don't feel the state that you've just accustomed yourself to. So now you feel like, oh, I'm super tired, or today I can totally feel me not having it. Yeah, because you were on meth for 4 days.
So as a motivation guy, do you think that we're ever going to come up with like some kind of designer drug that is
100%
specialized to your DNA, and your Apple Watch is reading what the blood requirements are or whatever, and it's like totally customized to whatever's actively happening in your body to optimize everything?
It's only a matter of time, just because that's the way the pharmaceutical industry is just going. And hopefully, I mean, there's a lot of things that are just being patented, so we're not going to be able to access it for several fucking years. But if there was a way for the top scientists to collaborate, I would love to take something that was similar to cocaine or that is similar to Adderall without the negative effects. Like, that'd be the dream, right?
Well, there's
where
like,
you get all the benefits without the addiction. And you
what if there was a slider of your hormones and you could adjust, be like, I want this much serotonin,
all
I want
day,
that
dude.
much testosterone.
I'd be pressing the morphine button every 8 minutes.
Would you?
What
if it was like part of a natural system that was like integrated with a doctor, and they were like trying to figure out like, how do we perfectly optimize this person's health with all of science and technology condensed into a $150 pill that you take on some regular basis or whatever? Right.
It's a limitless pill that gives you all the benefits without any of the downsides, and you just got to make sure that you have an ample dose and you keep it like consistent in your bloodstream. I get it.
Yeah.
I wish. But until then,
until then,
I think it's a focus of like I don't recommend anybody getting on Adderall so they can be more productive. I think that they should do their best to work on just building habits. But I am hypocritical in saying that if I use it too.
What do you think is the relationship of performance enhancing drugs in the workplace, and especially among top performers, which would be celebrities, I guess, or whatever?
It's competitive because you are put on such a pedestal, and you want to make sure that you are able to like exemplify what you can do on such a grand scale that people feel like they constantly need an edge, because no one wants to be dethroned.
Right, exactly.
And it's hard, especially when working in like big tech and for large companies where they expect so much from you. And you got to think about it like you're human. And there are some people that can produce at a whopping level, but they are not the norm. They are the anomalies. So for us to continuously work to catch up or to maintain that, it feels like we need things. And sometimes we do, man. Like,
even those people, though, are taking PEDs. I think tons of people.
Coca-Cola is a PED, especially if you drink 3 of them a day, just so that you can get through the day.
Monster energy drinks or Red Bulls.
Oh my God, I had a manager who was huge. Like, he was just a very large man. He drank 2 to 3 Monsters per day.
Oh, I could do that easy. I've done that.
Yeah, you have a infatuation with Little Annie's.
Stimulants with what?
Little Annie's. What is it?
Oh, Little Debbie's.
Little
I've always
Debbie's.
loved Little Debbie's. I must admit, it's like a Little Debbie. It's pretty freaking good.
If you could have an unlimited
If I could just
supply.
like poison myself with food, I would choose the poison of my choice would be Little Debbie, because everything else I eat is like the opposite of that.
Healthy,
for
it's
a long
very
time. It has
clean.
been basically, I have cheat periods once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever. But generally, day to day, I'm eating the same as I have been for a super long time.
And it's super consistent. Sometimes I'm working so much I don't remember to eat. And you think that would be like the most basic thing that you could do. And my wife comes home and I'm all stressed out. And she's all like, have you eaten? Have you drank water today? Yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah. Forgot.
I need that stuff to
I'm
feel
a
good.
houseplant. I forgot.
Yeah.
I had to take care of myself.
And so I think that's the cost of using these performance enhancing drugs.
They detach you from self.
Boom.
Yeah.
And from your natural feelings. How is your body feeling in terms of your energy, and are you hungry? Are you tired? Those signals should influence how you live your day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're totally cut off from those signals, as you, I believe, are with things like Adderall, then I think it's pretty easy to go way out of whack. But still, we live in uncomfortable times because we have way too much of everything. All of our problems are fake, right? We have the internet and DoorDash and everything. And real people are worried about food and water
at the same time,
or their government, or they're being hunted or whatever. Anyway, I don't know about that, but there's a lot of people in distress in the world.
Definitely people being hunted right now.
How many?
So many,
probably thousands.
Dude, do you forget that Mexico exists?
Yeah.
So they have cartels.
Yeah.
I saw something on Reddit today where a singer was handed a note and he was like, if you sing tonight, we'll kill you. And he sang, and he just you saw him read the note. You saw him scratch his nose and just kind of put his note in the back and started singing, which is a fucking champion. His Wikipedia says that he later got taken by some cartel and shot in the back of the head. So that exists currently.
Yep.
And at the same time, you're mad because your DoorDash order didn't come through. You know what I'm saying? It's perspective. It's the practicing of gratitude. It's really fortifying your mind. And can you get to the same level of success without doing any of this stuff? Absolutely. But for some people, it helps. And if I'm able to help at least one other person, then I feel like I've done my job for the day.
One thing I did want to ask you was about sometimes I hear a certain stigma about people in the motivation industry that they make their money by being in the motivation industry, and they're not it's like criticizing a politician for never having a job or working in the real world or whatever. And so I hear people say that about Tony Robbins, or how did Tim Ferriss get to the 4-hour work week? By writing the 4-hour work week. And it's an idea, I think we all appreciate these people and consider their success amazing or whatever. But what do you think of that general criticism of the motivation industry?
It's pretty valid, because I would be lying if I said that I didn't want to be in this industry because of how lucrative it is. There's an ability here, and there's a market where I can grow to a point that I can have a good income doing this and teaching full time, and being I teach full time now, but instead of teaching policy, I was teaching mindset training, communication training. I would do that in a heartbeat. If your intention to be in the space is just to profit and to take people and kind of harm people, and just it's a greedy ride, I think that eventually your intentions will be known, and things like that could make it to a point that
Well, it's almost evidence that what Tony Robbins is doing is totally genuine, because it's
seems
been
like
so
it
long
is.
lasting. Well, if it wasn't, then he would have been exposed a decade ago as being fraudulent in some way.
Yeah.
The authenticity of his motivational content is that this is what he loves doing.
Yeah.
And this is how and I would, as a capitalist or whatever, everyone should want to make as much money as humanly possible. Can you make $1 million? Can you make 10 million? Can you make $1 billion? Or whatever.
And I remember what I was saying on is if you're in this business and you're only looking at it for profit or to take advantage of people, you'll eventually be caught. And the businesses can dissolve, or your name becomes synonymous with bad reputation. And there's plenty of people and gurus that are currently in the game that do that profit, that have connections, that have money, that burn people along the way. But I don't want to do that. So like, I know that my intention is just to help others in a way and do something that I love doing. And I'm hoping that one day it ends up providing for me an income that I can enjoy and have a beautiful life. I would take that over, what I do now.
Are there
100%.
are there negative examples that you can think of where people are like selling something that they're not actually living?
Yeah, there's plenty of those, man. There's plenty of people who are fraudulent. There's people who just want to like push something that doesn't really have any thought behind it. And they're just good marketers or good producers. There's people who make music to go viral, and then there's people who make music because they love making music. Right. And I feel like that's with every industry. When it comes to this one specifically, you're right, where people kind of make their money by writing a book. It picks up traction. They build like seminar series out of it. They do book signings and these classes and tours. And I want all of that, man. I want to do that whole thing. But the intention of doing it is with the purpose of helping others.
So the authenticity is in helping others for real and searching through all this content, what's still relevant today, how do we need to improve things or whatever.
Right. And I will build my own audience. Whoever I resonate with is whoever I resonate with. I'm somebody's flavor. And as long as I'm putting something...
I guess that's what YouTube taught us. We're all somebody's flavor.
We're all somebody's flavor. So if your thing is to... dance a certain dance and that's all you want to talk about, you could be that person. I want to be the person that like uplifts and inspires people who they listen to my audio tapes and they're like, this guy got me through the hardest times. I was feeling terrible. Of course I want to make money off of this and live a life. I have, bills to pay and things to live off of. I'm only human. But I've always had the idea that no matter what wealth level I'm at, I can give something back. I can do something, and I regularly donate my time or sometimes money.
Does Tony Robbins do any of that?
Constantly.
So
he matches
has a percentage of.
He matches whatever his foundation does. So his business will make like $50 million donated, and he'll match that. So he's fed like 1 billion people through Feed America,
cool.
And regardless of whatever you think about it, at the end of the day, it's such a good for human win. He owns a fucking island.
What's authentic about that is that he organized all that into what it is.
Yeah, he owns a fucking island, and then he's also fed 1 billion
that can be
people.
Dangerous these days. Nothing good happens on islands. So why do you need to be so secluded?
Puerto Rico's an island, and there's some good stuff that happens there, man. Like it's just
the Caribbean. I guess.
It's a weird time. And to your question, like when it comes to the stigma, there are people in it, like in every industry, that are false and just want to take advantage of people, and I don't feel like those people last.
Yeah.
They hopefully don't last. You want to make sure that the good guys win, and I feel like if you're true about what you want to do, and if it's also helping people, it goes back to the win-win-win, where you're helping not only just certain individuals, but you're able to give back to the overall community and the good of the world, then it's not a bad thing. It doesn't matter if you think I'm cheesy. Like, what are my actions? What are my accomplishments? What are my feats? There's a lot of stuff that they say about like Ty Lopez and stuff, but what is that man doing? He's teaching people. They're following his practices. Some people are able to exponentially grow their income and just do better for themselves and the ones around them. And if, again, you help one other person, doesn't that mean you did a good thing?
I think it totally does. And I think that's what makes that criticism so invalid, is that these people really have organized these systems that are helping people, and that's tangible, and we should all make as much money as humanly possible. I don't think there's any there's something about like a public servant, and they're willing to work for like a teacher or a police officer or whatever. These people that are working for less.
In the hands of good people, wealth is a tool that ends up benefiting more than just themselves. In the hands of bad people, it just ends up being hoarded.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't think it should anyway. I don't think anyone should limit themselves in their ambitions for wealth. Have
as much infinite cash as possible, but what do you do with that cash? You can live your best life. You can create a legacy. You can build an empire.
Yeah. I mean, like, when you create community and you create aid and.
I know there's not that many 90-year-old people on their deathbed being like, oh, I should have hoarded more money.
Totally. Check out Nate at Carpe Natem.
114.
And he's got a lot of motivational and gratitudinal, is that a word?
I don't know.
Content.
We'll make it a word. Check out my gratitudinal content content on Carpe Natem 114. That's the handle across all social platforms. It's even the website, carpenatem114.com, Spotify, iTunes, and soon to be YouTube.
Soon to be YouTube. Check it out. It's a great podcast. I've been on it. Thanks, Nate, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.